Almost ready there. Hang on. Settings. Let me check the settings one more time. It says we're okay. Almost there. Hang on. There we go. Okay, are you seeing what I'm seeing here? St. Tommy. All right. By many portions and many modes of old, God, speaking to the fathers and the prophets, in the last of these days, speaks to us in a Son, whom he appoints enjoyer of the allotment of all. Hi, Justin. Nice to see you. Hey, Sterling. Hey, Krishna. How you doing? By many portions and many modes of old. This is how God used to do it. He spoke to the fathers of Israel, right? And the prophets. However, in the last of these days, he speaks to us in a Son, whom he appoints enjoyer of the allotment of all. Okay, I see a lot of beauty in this verse here. And if we are going to attach ourselves in any way, shape, or form to the Son of God, oh man, aren't we lucky, because he is the enjoyer of the allotment of all. What is this? He's the enjoyer of the allotment of all. Not only that, but through whom he also makes the eons. Why, it would make perfect sense that if he's the enjoyer of the allotment of all, he'd have to start with time itself, right? He'd have to start with time itself, because as soon as time is created, time being a measure of change, so things start changing, right? What changes? Creation has begun. He's the enjoyer of the allotment of all. I don't see how you can dare suggest that the Christian God, the God who's going to burn the vast majority in hell forever, you wouldn't dare suggest that he is the enjoyer of the allotment of all, because there'd be too much to answer for it. So this must be a universalist statement. All is made through him and for him and by him. He is the enjoyer of the allotment of all. Through whom, by the way, through whom he also makes the eons. So that we're just throwing that in, that he makes the eons. We're throwing that in as just an off-the-cuff remark. Why? Of course. Why, of course he makes the eons. He's the enjoyer of the allotment of all. So check this out. Check this word appointment out. He was appointed to be the enjoyer of the allotment of all. And of course he makes the eons through his Son. Let's see if we can capture the next verse and see what that says. Who, being the effulgence of his glory and the emblem of his assumption, besides carrying on all his powerful declarations, making a cleansing of sins, is seated at the right hand of the Majesty in the heights. Good golly, Miss Molly, I've got an idea that we have no idea what this is talking about, but it sounds so glorious that we would not want to shortchange this passage in any means possible. By any means possible. By many portions and many modes of old, God in the past was speaking to us, speaking to the fathers anyway, in the prophets. In the last of these days, he speaks to us in a Son. Son. It's very family there. It's very much family. There's a lot of heart and emotion in just calling him the Son. And what do you do with the Son? Why, you give him blessings. You give him a royal robe. You give him the inheritance. In the last of these days, he speaks to us in a Son whom he appoints enjoyer of the allotment of all, through whom he also makes the eons. Yep, I kind of want to tag along with this fellow. Remember that story by Mark Twain, the Prince and the Pauper? It was a cute little story about a prince and a pauper who exchanged places for a while, maybe a couple weeks. And the prince knew that he was more or less the enjoyer of the allotment of all. He knew he had a destiny. He knew he had a purpose. And the pauper and he looked just alike, like doppelgangers, And it was a story of their two different adventures. And but there's something really beautiful in that story that we can see here, in that the prince knew his position, and the Son of God is appointed enjoyer of the allotment of all. You're not going to deny him that enjoyment or that appointment, or both the enjoyment and the appointment. You're not going to deny him. He's appointed enjoyer of the allotment of all. It's his destiny. It is his destiny to enjoy the allotment of all, and it would just make perfect dang sense that this would be wrapped in the periods of time that we call the eons. And then there's that little semicolon there going on to describe him. He's the effulgence of his glory. What does that mean? He's the emblem of his assumption. What does that mean? He's carrying on all by his powerful declaration. What does that mean? He's making a cleansing of sins. Oh, I think I can tag onto that one. He's seated at the right hand of the majesty in the heights. Man. See, I'm recklessly bringing this verse to you, this passage to you, even though I have no idea what I'm looking at here. But my heart sings. My heart sings that there's a lot of beauty here. Way in the past, God was speaking to the fathers and the prophets, but in the last of these days, he speaks to us in the Son. Well, let's just take a look at this Son and see who he is. Why, lo and behold, he's been appointed to be the enjoyer of the allotment of all. I think I'm part of the all. So he's going to enjoy me? Okay. Through whom he makes the eons? Well, I'm stuck in the eons. I know that. Who being the effulgence of his glory and the emblem of his assumption, the emblem of his assumption, what is he assuming? I don't know, but the Son of God is the emblem of his assumption. Is he assuming the right over all? Is he assuming that he is the enjoyer of the allotment of all? Remember Peter in the book of Acts was fussing at those Pharisees and boys. He said, Jesus Christ is Lord of all. Well, so Peter said he is the Lord of all. Whoever wrote this book of Hebrews, he seems to concur as a good assessment that this Son of God is the enjoyer of the allotment. He's appointed enjoyer of the allotment of all. Who's going to deny him? All. Now, theology might try to deny him the enjoyment of the allotment of all, but doesn't seem to work on this verse, so I doubt you'll hear any sermons on Sunday morning anytime soon on this verse here, that in the last of these days, God speaks to us in a Son. Through whom he appoints the allotment of all. It's refreshing. It's refreshing in the hugeness of the scope of it. Through whom he also makes the eons. So according to this language, we can't dare suggest that the eons are endless. Because if this word aeon, it's plural here, Most translations have no idea what to do with this verse. It's so big, it's too big for them. Some translations even dare suggest that it says, through whom he also makes the universe. But it's the Greek word aeon. Whatever it is, whether it's, I'll mildly consent that maybe it is the word universe just for a moment. But either way, he makes, so it didn't always exist, whatever this eon is. In the last of these days, he speaks to us in the Son, whom he appoints enjoyer of the allotment of all, through whom he also makes the eons. Who being the effulgence of his glory. What in the world is that? Glory, we kind of know what that is. The effulgence of his glory is that the shining peak of his glory? That's like glory on top of glory? Yeah, I think maybe that's it. He's the glory on top of his glory and the emblem of his assumption. It's kind of interesting when people make assumptions, especially if they're wrong, if it's the wrong assumption. And if they are making the right assumption, ooh, that's kind of a sweet little deal going there in our human relations. If someone makes the right assumption and carries on, but if they make the wrong assumption and carry on, then it's a disaster. But here it says that Christ, the Son of God, is the emblem of his assumption. Does that mean that everything we hope to be, want to be, desire to be, is assumed in Christ? It's all wrapped up in this assumption. What assumption? Well, can we go back up to the prior verse and say that he's the enjoyer of the allotment of all, so he gets to assume? He gets to assume a lot. He gets to boss us around. He gets his every wish. He assumes that his will be done. The Son of God is the emblem of his assumption. The effulgence of his glory. Man, we have got a lot of depth to probe here. We are going to be bowing that knee and acclaiming with our tongue for a long time. It's not going to be a quick and overdone deal, as the limitarians generally concede or admit to. It's not going to be over with when every knee bows and every tongue acclaims. Dare we say that it has something to do with the effulgence of his glory and the emblem of his assumption? Besides, check that word out. Besides. I think the word besides means we got to the main point. Now we're going to carry on something else. We're going to prattle about something else. That the Son of God is carrying on all by his powerful declaration. Can we get away with that? Can we say that the Son of God is carrying on all by his powerful declaration? He's going to be the enjoyer of the allotment of all by his powerful declaration. He's making a cleansing of sin by his powerful declaration. He is seated at the right hand of the majesty in the heights by his powerful declaration. You know, the idea behind good news, the gospel, it's really that it's a declaration. It's not an offer. God's not offering any deals. He is declaring. He is carrying on all. I don't think I'm mistaken to say that this is a big passage here that has not been properly explored. This is not about us per se. We might find ourselves in that section that says making a cleansing of sins, but isn't that like a sidebar? The vast majority of these 3 little verses is about the Son of God. It's almost not about us. And that's good news. Not much hinges on us. Even the making of the cleansing of sins is very contingent on who he is. Who is he? I got a secret for you. He's the enjoyer of the allotment of all. Got a secret for you. Through him, he makes the eons. Got a secret for you. He's the effulgence of his glory and the emblem of his assumption. Check it out. He's carrying on by all. He's carrying on all by his powerful declaration. Making a cleansing of sins, is seated at the right hand. You know, just looking at this, I don't think that he could even be seated at the right hand of the majesty in heights unless he had made a cleansing of sins. So it's a done deal. The way this grammar is structured, this passage here, one thing leads to the next thing and leads to the next thing. It's like stacked. By many portions and many modes of old, God speaking to the fathers in the prophets, in the last of these days, speaks to us in a Son whom he appoints enjoyer of the allotment of all. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. I'm going to close up shop in just a minute. But so if you take away anything from these few minutes together, check it out, that he is appointed enjoyer of the allotment of all, through whom he also makes the eons, who, being the effulgence of his glory and the emblem of his assumption, besides carrying on all of his powerful declarations, making a cleansing of sins, finally he's seated at the right hand of the majesty in the heights. So there. What you got? You got something you want to add to this? Can you beat this at all? Can you beat the idea that the Son of God is appointed enjoyer of the allotment of all? Can you beat the idea that he was the one through whom he made the eons? Can you beat the idea that he's the effulgence of his glory and the emblem of his assumption? Wow. Making a cleansing of sins. Can you even beat that idea? So this This ing form of the word cleansing here sounds like it's a timeless thing. And it doesn't sound like anything is up to us. And as proof that it's timeless, he is seated. Wow. Cleansing is in the aorist tense, which is a Greek form, a Greek verb tense that's timeless. Seated is past tense. Making a cleansing of sins is seated. Well, isn't that interesting? At the right hand of God. All right, one more time and then we'll exit stage right. By many portions and many modes of old, God, speaking to the fathers and the prophets in the last of these days, speaks to us in a Son, whom he appoints enjoyer of the allotment of all, through whom he also makes the eons, who being the effulgence of his glory, an emblem of his assumption, besides carrying on all by his powerful declaration, making a cleansing of sins, is seated at the right hand of the majesty in the heights. Grace to you. And to you, Nancy. Amen.